Hey, folks. Before we get started today, I'd like to take a moment for us all to hold the Ukrainian people in our hearts. We cannot imagine the horror they are facing right now. But as founders, we do know how to lend our voice and support to folks going through very difficult times. So thanks for joining me on that. Wonderful thought. And speaking of turbulent times, all businesses experience turbulence from sources outside the business, like a war or a pandemic, and from inside the business. Our guest is an expert at helping leaders communicate effectively during turbulent times, including managing the turbulence from their internal dialogue. And you founders know what I am talking about. You know, when that inner critic gets way too loud and has too much to say. Oh, yeah. How to help manage that inner voice is so important. We're going to have a powerful conversation today with our guest. And yeah, it's Fab Female Founder Friday on the Startup Life Live Show. Let's glow, everyone. Woohoo! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Live Show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I have firsthand experience of what you are crawling through every single day, the highs, the lows, the popping the champagne 1 minute and crying into it the next. So I am deeply grateful that you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game, because as you do better, your business will do better. And yay, it's fun to cheer on a fellow founder. I'm always interviewing some really fun founders. And I want to say a big hello right now to the wonderful replay viewers and podcast listeners. I'm so delighted you're tuning in and upping your founder game as well. And wherever you're watching or listening, please be sure to click on the like button. And if you're tuning in from YouTube, be sure to share your subscribe love and click the bell icon. Thank you so much. And to receive an alert whenever I post a new show, be sure to join, ta-da, the Startup Life Live meetup group. This way you'll be alerted whenever there's a founder I'm interviewing that might be in alignment with your business, that you can hop in and grab some gems, or you might just need an uplifting moment right during the day going, I got to hear from some other folks. I need some inspiration, because you will always get that and more whenever you tune into the show. And by the way, did you know you can listen to this, and you podcast listeners know this, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast platforms, or just visit my website, andelyons.com/podcast to listen to the show. And if you are resonating with the show's mission of amplifying diverse founder voices while serving first-time founders around the world, please reach out to me to learn more about how you can make a difference and a greater impact on the startup ecosystem by sponsoring the show. All right, so I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Monique Maley. And she and I are having a very wonderful and delicious conversation before I hit the live button, talking about how important leadership is right now during these turbulent times. And we're going to dive deep into the conversation. But let me just pull up her website while I read her background to you, so you can be taking a look and perhaps visiting her wonderful website. She's a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, and in 2011, she founded Articulate Persuasion, that's what you're looking at right now, her 3rd entrepreneurial success, and a company that cultivates authentic and influential leaders. As a classically trained actor with more than a decade spent in the theater and film industries, Monique offers her clients unique insight into influential communication, and she's the author of Turbulence. And I'm just going to go over here and bring that up now too, because we are going to be giving a free copy away of Turbulence today. So take a look at this. wonderful new book, Turbulence, Leadership's Unsexy Solution to Streamline Rapid Growth. So be sure to leave a comment so that you are entered to win the book. But I don't want to waste another second. Let's bring this phenomenal founder into the room. Hey, Monique. I'm
Hey,
so
how are
happy to
you?
see you. Woohoo! I'm so
You too.
happy that you're joining me today for a delicious conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great. Where are you hailing from today?
I am in, I would say sunny, cloudy, Washington, D.C. today.
Okay. And I'm just going to say hi to Gail. I don't know what she, one of our wonderful viewers and a female founder extraordinaire, Gail Rayum. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, Gail, even though we've chatted many times. She's having a hard time with the video. So far, it looks good on my end. I think we'll be fine. And Casey's saying the same thing. The video and sound won't load for me either. I'm sad by that, guys, and I'm not sure what's going on. Everything's checking fine over here on my end. Hopefully, it will improve as we go along, and hopefully, you'll be able to hear us. So please let me know. This is the excitement of going live. Okay, so we're going to keep this conversation moving forward. You know, as I was talking about earlier, we are excited to give away a copy of your book today, Turbulence. I mean, you talk about perfect timing. There's so much turbulence in the world, and it does have an effect on our businesses. Yeah, Monique, yesterday, Arlen Hamilton just said in one of her tweets, it's okay to not be okay right now. You know, this is tough times, but we still have to be able to communicate that. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and how to keep leading during tough times. But before we get started, I want to find out more about you. I want to find out, you know, that you're not only a CEO and an entrepreneur, but that you were an actor once upon a time. How did that start go for you in
Uh,
life?
well, I started very young. Actually, I had my first paid professional acting gig when I was 8. And I would have gone straight to drama school from high school, except my parents, of course, in that age. No, you have to go to college first. So I'm glad I did. Shout out to Tufts University. But I studied in the two majors like closest to theater without getting a theater major, which was a double major in literature and psychology. And then I worked in the industry for 15 years. But I knew that acting and theater was my passion at a very, very young age. And so
Wow. So
um,
you were
it was,
entertaining and what did you go for? More of the serious drama or musicals or
well,
both?
when you're an actor, you go for work, right? You
Okay.
go, you go for work. You don't, especially in the early stages, there's no, and I think founders all know this, right? You go for where the clients are,
Yeah.
um, and you pivot when necessary. It's not any different. And I've always thought being an actor was actually my first entrepreneurial endeavor. It was not a funded one,
Absolutely.
certainly, but if you think about it, you are your own product, right? You have to be proactive about everything. You have to surround yourself with great mentors. You constantly have to be doing professional development. You have to build a really strong network. You have to go in and, an audition is like a sales pitch. You have to put together your marketing materials. I mean, the work of being an actor, much like being a founder, is less about the actual work, right? It's less about the product that you've built and more about all the other stuff that comes with it.
Boy.
So I think that was my first entrepreneurial journey.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love how you wove it all together into a wonderful piece of fabric of how it relates to entrepreneurship and how it prepares you because really you are an artistpreneur when you are an actor. And you have to keep upping your game. You have
Yep.
to know how to promote yourself. You have to know where the money is. What does this customer want? I.e., what does
It's
this
a business.
producer want?
You are
Yeah,
the business, but it's still a business. You're looking to do it, yes, because it's something you're passionate about, much like any founder of any startup.
yeah.
But it just happens to be the business is you.
Yep, 100%. So, how does one leave that behind? Because, people I know who have loved acting, do you just do it on the side then for local theater or anything like that? Or did you just do a hard boom? I'm
Yeah,
shifting.
no, it was a bit more of a transition. I
Mhm.
worked as an actor for many years. I founded a theater company when I was 24 4. And
What?
at that point I started, so that's my first business. And at that point I was doing both, obviously on stage, but I was running the business of the theater. So I founded the theater company. I got our 501c3 from the IRS. I did the sponsorship and got the money. I managed all that. And it was just because I was the person most capable to be able to do that kind of work. But you learn a lot about business. I mean, you just start learning. I think that all of us as founders realize that business school doesn't really prepare you for starting a business. It's getting your hands dirty and doing it, and hopefully surrounding yourself by people who've been down the road before. So that was how I started moving. And then when I moved to London, where I moved there at the age of 27 to continue my work, the aperture for being able to move into the business side of theater and film was really open to me. And so I moved further and further in that realm. So after 6 years of living there, I was actually doing film finance and development work, which is really like investor pitching, a lot of it.
Oh, sure.
But the worst investment anybody can ever make, don't invest in movies. If you're in the business, great, but it's, as an investor, it's not.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I have a shout out to Ted, who loves to invest in indie films. But sometimes the indie films can, have a little bit, stream more of a lean startup, and so
a little bit more budget friendly. And there are a lot of tools available today that can make an indie film much less expensive than even 10 years ago. So yeah.
So I'm going to just say a quick howdy to one of our favorite fans, Brent from Ottawa, Canada, Brent Manuel, and he's sending warm wishes to Boston. Thank you, because it's a nice big wicked snowstorm outside that we're enjoying. And speaking of snowstorms, Denver's not having one today. I don't think so, but they just had a big one. Hey, Mia Voss, host of the Shit We Don't Talk About podcast. I'm so happy you're tuning in and joining us today. I was talking about you to Monique earlier about conversations, that your wonderful comment about we may be in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. No. Such a good comment. So as we start talking about turbulence, right? I would love for you to define turbulence as it relates to business. We're all feeling just so much upheaval right now between some of the insane things that are going on for our wonderful, precious LGBTQ plus members in the world and communities in the world, but also with the pandemic and with this war happening right now. Let's, swing it to business for a minute and define turbulence for business.
So the way I define turbulence and the way the title of the book came around is because it's a term that I used with my clients, my coaching consulting clients, around the turbulence within your organization. And what I'd really love to talk about and focus, because this is where my work really sort of is solidified, is there's turbulence that comes from the outside that there's not anything we can do, right? A pandemic comes, there's not much you can do. Stay focused on your business, do the best that you can, pivot where necessary, etc. But what we don't think about is the turbulence that is created internally, right? Sometimes it's the turbulence that we ourselves as leaders create because of what we do or what we don't do. Or maybe there's a team member or a process or something that is creating turbulence. It is either slowing down growth, or sometimes it just starts to create goes from a plateau into a slow decline.
Right.
And why don't we focus on the stuff that we do have some control over? There's so much we can't control, but there is so much we can do. So for me, this book was really a roadmap for founders, for leaders of organizations. And I say that I work with entrepreneurial leaders, and many of those are founders. But for me, entrepreneurial leaders exist in corporate as well. It's folks who are risk tolerant, right? Who are curious, who are always looking to improve, who are open enough about their leadership to say, how can I make this better? And so that was how the book came about. And so what are the things that we can do as individuals to either level up our own leadership so that we're scaling our leadership abilities on par with our organizations, right? We don't want the growth of our company to get
Right.
out ahead of where we are as leaders.
But Monique, for startup founders, especially newbie founders who it might be a side hustle right now as they start to build, or now they're stepped in, they're all in, their team acquisition is happening, they've raised money, or they're bootstrapping in a way that works because they have customers for traction. How do they step into leadership when they have been an employee forever?
Right.
And they've never had that ownership feeling of like, wow, I need to lead, I need to inspire, and I need to keep the vision happening. And frankly, as a sidebar, some folks just are not able to do that. And it's a great opportunity to hire someone who can. But let's talk about that, because a lot of people say, oh, you're born with leadership skills.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, that's another podcast. I've got an 18-year-old and they're being bombarded, right now, young people, about how they're supposed to be leaders. I'm like, if everybody's a leader and nobody's following, then we're all in a mess.
Right.
So I think leadership, the way I define it with clients, right, and especially first-time founders, first-time leaders, is that the difference between being the employee and being the leader is you have to go from being a doer to being the leader. It's about being head down, doing things, or being head up with your eye on the horizon, where you are there to support your team. You're there to see where the gaps are. It's sort of like making sure that the road ahead of you is paved and clear of obstacles, rather than getting into the weeds. And I think that's the hardest shift for a first-time leader. You have spent your career and been successful at doing and getting out of the stuff that's your comfort zone, that you're successful with, that especially when you're early in the stages of the business and you don't have a big enough team, you may have to do some of the doing, but you also have to start thinking about scheduling time every week to make sure you're leading.
Right.
So what is the broader vision?
Wait. Scheduling time every week to make sure you're leading. I got to pull on that thread for a second, Monique. Yeah. What does that mean?
So if you think about, you're very busy, you're starting your business, especially if this is a side hustle and you're starting to really think about forming a business around it, the majority of your day is taken up in the business.
Right.
It's building the product, it's working on the tech, it's putting together the marketing, it's having sales conversations. And so in those early days, we don't think about stepping back and saying, okay, where do I need to develop my leadership skills? Am I looking at the horizon? What kind of people do I need to bring on board to support me as a leader to execute on this idea? And it's something that we have to get into the habit of, because by the time we've really grown our business and we have a team, you should be spending 90% of your time leading rather than doing. But
everybody,
that shift,
that shift is so important.
Intention.
Yeah, I'm just having an Andelicious moment right now over this. For so many reasons. Now, you founders know that you're so busy with all the plates in the air, and sometimes you get to be a little bit of a control freak because you want it done right, and you don't know how to delegate, and you're not leading. This sitting down with you yourself, me, myself, and I, right? Basically sitting down, removing yourself from the inside of the business and looking down at the business, Monique, I feel is what you're saying, and think about how can I structure the next week, the next month, the next quarter, so that I am leading, and always holding that as a primary goal. Everyone, 90% of your time should be spent leading. Monique,
once
right?
you have a team, right?
Yeah, once you have a team,
people to lead. But there are other people that you're going to need to lead, even in the earlier stages of a startup, right? You're going to want potential clients to follow you. You're going to want to start inspiring people to become team members, right? There's a lot of leadership that happens, and they're not going to want to follow you because you've got a real handle on all the financials. Yes, that's going to be something, but that's not really going to inspire people in the longer term. So we think of leadership as the title and as being the person in charge. But you go and you think about, what does that mean? I love Simon Sinek's view, which is, he says that it is not being in charge, it's taking care of people in your charge. Because, yeah.
Okay, I got another moment coming on, everybody. I know Mia's probably sitting there going, yep. Stitch that on a pillow. Would you please say that one more time for me, Monique?
Yes, it's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of the people in your charge.
Oh, so beautiful.
If you think about scaling a business, how can you get bigger if you try to have your fingers in all the pies, right? The key is to find great people to lead all the areas and all the people under them. And so that your day is spent thinking about the broader business and supporting the leaders of all the departments and divisions that you will eventually have. Because you can't do one-on-ones with even 20 team members. You do, right. That's just too many, right? So if you think about taking the people who are taking care of the people who are taking care of the clients.
Right. So good. And this is why I have this show, everybody, is so that you can continue to embrace and step into your role as founder. It is not something that happens overnight. You're going to stumble along the way. You're going to take steps back and be more like an employee mindset instead of an owner mindset. But that's okay. You keep coming back. And Monique, what advice do you have for founders who are still wobbling in this role? Is there something other than, sitting down with themselves once a week and
right.
making sure that, am I being a leader or am I being a doer? Am I working in the business or on the business? What else can they say to sort of help get through this uneven period of time?
Well, I think first and foremost, and I think that this is true of every leader at every stage of every size business, you need to have support. There's a reason why folks like myself have successful coaching businesses, because leaders often have to have somebody in their corner that they can brainstorm out loud with, who can help hold them accountable, who can help them stay focused, or even just get focused, articulate their real challenges or their real desires or their real vision. In the early stages, if you can't, not in a position to have a coach, then you certainly want to have a group of sort of an unofficial board of directors, a group of people that you can bring together as a group, not just one-on-one, but what if we start having a group as a collective? Because leadership requires perspective, and leadership in itself is really lonely. Even when you have a big team, there are things that you can't talk to your team about, but there are big decisions that you have to make that require real thought and perspective, and you get your input from your team, but making that decision is something you do yourself, right? The buck stops with you. So having people around you that you can be really open, what I like to refer to as professional vulnerability, is really important. That's key.
Yeah. And if anybody's struggling with spending the money on a coach, I'm going to tell you, it is an investment in you, because as a 4 times founder, I can tell you most times I had the answer, but without having someone to talk it out with, someone who could hold up the mirror, who could pull on some threads that I was saying, I could not bring that solution out of myself just sitting at my desk. Okay. It requires that coach. Go ahead, Monique.
A great point, Ande, because I will tell you, and because it just happened 2 days ago with a client, it is so common that people come to me we start talking about a challenge they're having, and they really know the answer. They know, I can hear from what they're saying. They never state it outright, but I can hear that they know exactly what they want to do. So then the thread I need to pull on is, why do you feel that it's still a challenge? Why can't you execute on that decision? Because that's where the turbulence happens. And in this particular case, it was someone who's on the team who is not a fit. This CEO has been working very hard to try and fit this square peg into a variety of round holes in the organization. He knows that there is no solution. But his turbulence is happening because this person is starting to create a lot of challenges with the rest of the team, is becoming toxic.
Yes.
And he is avoiding a conversation because he cares about this individual, because he really wanted to make it work. And so the work that we're doing is, how do you have an effective conversation that doesn't feel to the person on the other side like you're being cruel or you're being thoughtless or you're being disloyal, but you have to do what's right for your business. Because
That's right.
when you don't, there are all kinds of problems that are happening in the organization right now because he is not wanting to take that step.
And we know you're scared. Okay. We know moving someone along to something better, because they're going to find something better. This is not a good fit for them. And I love that. So in your book, do you talk about that kind of framework? Because this
Absolutely.
is where founders really can
The
blow it.
first chapter of my book is about conversations, because it's something we do a million times a day.
Yeah.
And I break the chapter up into two types of conversations. One is conversations with others. Like, how do we get better at having really effective conversations with other people? And part of that is really, how do we keep ourselves from avoiding conversations, which is the number one biggest challenge that we create for ourselves. The not having the conversation is a problem in and of itself. And the other part of the chapter is conversations with ourselves, because often internal narratives and an internal dialogue is the biggest stumbling block.
Absolutely.
So this individual that I'm talking about, the CEO, his challenge was, yes, having a conversation with this person. But the truth is, we had to start with the conversation he was having with himself, because he had decided in advance how this individual was going to react, what this individual is going to say. And I say, you've got to let that individual say things and react in a way for themselves, right? We cannot start having the conversation for them.
It's called coming up with considerations for them, and they're not even in the room.
Absolutely. So the dialogue he was having, the narrative that was in his head is, this isn't going to go well, this is going to be hard, it's going to be real uncomfortable, or whatever that may be. So that's the first conversation that we have to master, right? Then how do we go have the other conversation so that the company gets what it needs, and then this individual is as supported as you can be in a situation where you're going to have to separate from an employee.
Whew. And this will happen, folks. You're going to hire somebody because you think that they're going to be so amazing, and then they show up. And this is why you want to have, especially startup founders, you want to have that 30-day check-in, 60 and 90-day check-in. Yeah. Not that, they should be feeling job insecurity or anything like that. You want to keep leading them into their greatness. But at the same time, you're not a large corporation. You cannot sit on somebody who is not helping and is actually causing more turbulence.
And there's so many examples I could give you about this type of conversation challenge. I had a client years ago where we started a meeting and she was really wrestling with the decision again. And I said, it sounds to me like you've already made this decision. And she had to go to her CEO and sort of tell them what was going on. I said, it sounds to me like you've already made this decision. She said, well, I said, if it was completely up to you, would you decided? And she said, yes. I said, then that's what you need to go tell your CEO.
Yeah.
And so she called me the next day because she went into the meeting with the CEO and she sat down in the chair across from his desk and he was leaning over, apparently writing something. And she sat down and she said, I've made a decision. And he dropped his pen and sat back. And she told him what she had decided. And he said, thank you for doing that. And she said, what do you mean? He says, oftentimes you want to come and think it through with me. Thank you for taking that off my plate.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So her position within the organization starts to go up. Her confidence level, right? Her executive presence changes, and her confidence in her own decision making. She didn't even realize that she was always double checking with him to make sure he was okay.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I hope everyone is taking that brilliant example to heart and really taking that in. I just want to say a quick howdy do to Mia's leaving all sorts of wonderful comments here. And And one of them is like, oh, Ande, you know how I feel about having your own board of directors. I preach this in my talks all the time. Yay, Monique. And the other thing that I want to bring up too, because I hear this all the time and it just gives me the creeps actually, is when founders go, we're just one big happy family.
Oh, yeah.
Why is it necessary to have two families? And why put everybody in the awkward position? Because family is not necessarily a good thing, folks. And it's definitely
talk to anybody after Thanksgiving and say, one big happy family. How many people say, oh yeah, it was a great big happy family? I think especially generationally, I think, people, this whole, what is referred to as work-life balance. I call it work-life integration because I don't see a lot of balance in it. Has really blurred the lines between social and professional. And I admire people who want to create an environment where people feel safe, where people feel supported. That's a goal. That's not always a family, number one.
Right.
And going for a family is not going to help you make decisions which actually help you build a better team and a better culture. You really want to think about what is it that makes people feel supported? What can we do to really make people feel valued? It's more important that people feel valued than if they feel that they are with family. Sometimes you can tell our worst behaviors can often be with our families. So I don't know that we want to encourage that sort of thing. We do want to encourage a good collaborative environment. We want to encourage an environment where people can be open. We want to make sure that people feel supported. So what are the goals that you're going for? And I have a client right now where they're 8 years into the business and they're really poised for huge change, but that's been part of the problem. We're really social. We're super social together and we all get along. And then when you start doing the individual evaluations and you really start digging into individual conversations, there is a big mess under that happy, wet blanket that's laying on the top. So,
yes,
what goals are you setting for your organization? And I love being really specific with word choices, because if your goal is to be a family, it's going to create different behaviors and decisions and processes than if you're looking for a great collaborative environment, a great supportive environment, or an environment where people feel valued.
Valued. It's so important. And it's what keeps people staying and continuing with you when they get better job offers. I'm just saying, folks, when they feel valued and their presence is important and they feel like they're adding and contributing in a way they could not do anywhere else because you are empowering them to do that and be that person that they've always wanted to be and part of the team, not the family.
And because they trust you, not because they like you.
Yes, thank you,
everybody. We will
everybody.
go a lot farther with someone we trust than we will with someone we like. They can like you and trust you, but your goal as a leader should be for trust. And sometimes you're going to have to make decisions that make you, not likable, or it feels that way sometimes. But there are also ways to have those conversations where that gets off the plate. And the most important thing to focus on is, how can I make sure my team trusts me?
Okay. And everybody write that down and have it on a sticky by wherever you work. How can my team trust me? If for any of you out there who have kids, they're going to look you in the eye, 2, 3, 4 years old. I hate you, mommy, daddy. They're going to be impossible. And you're like, okay, I hope you change your mind, but I'm in charge here. And I'm the one who's going to make great decisions for you, again, in a healthy environment. And that child trusts that you're going to take care of the situation in the home life. It's the same thing at work. You're providing an environment where they feel safe because they know you're in charge. And so I go back to the person that you were working with, and she went to the CEO and said, I made a decision. And Monique, that brings me back to the other thing that we can, maybe as an employee, we were part of a team and a group, right? And we bantered back and forth. We went for drinks afterwards. We talked about all of this stuff and we processed. Right. And of course, women are really interested in processing. It's how we are. It's wonderful. But this is why, as a founder of your business, you gotta invest in your mentor, in your coach, in that board of advisors or directors that are going to help you churn the stuff out, and they have no bias involved.
Right.
Right, Monique?
Well, and because I think that the reason why it's so important, at least in my estimation and how I see it's helped my clients over 12 years, is because it provides clarity. Clarity in decisions I'm going to make, clarity in how I articulate the vision of my business, clarity in what our culture is. How can you talk about your culture if it's really not clear to you? And the thing that I always say, if it's not clear to you, you cannot make it clear to anybody else.
You can't.
And how can I trust you if I think you don't know what you're doing, or I don't know where you're going, or I don't understand where you're leading me? So you have to get clear. And sometimes we cannot get clear or get that clarity in our own heads, right?
Yeah.
We need to talk it out. We need to think it through. We need perspective and dialogue to get there sometimes. And that's why I think having that group around you to support that's really what you're going to get. That investment alone is huge. There's a reason why metrics are always used in organizations, because metrics provide complete clarity. They know they tell you instantaneously how you're doing, what's working, what's not working, what you can do better. Why wouldn't we want that kind of clarity everywhere? What makes someone successful in this organization? What does leadership at this organization look like? How are we articulating our culture? How are we articulating our vision? How are we articulating the value to our customers? All that requires clarity.
Woo! So important. Now, in chapter 2 of your wonderful book, which we're giving away free today, everybody, I'm just pop this back up here, Turbulence. It just makes me feel so Stephen Covey in this point that you make, which is, as a leader, it's not other people's job to understand you. It is your job to be understood. And that comes from, having read that wonderful book, The 7 Habits of
Successful people.
Thank you. But you talk about this in your book as well. Share with folks why this is important. You can't just say it and say, make it so, and hey, number 2, do it. You have to be really clear that you have been heard and understood.
Understood. Absolutely. I mean, the framework that I lay out at the beginning of the book is this idea that communication is always a dialogue. It is never a monologue. If you think about the foundations of the word, or the genesis of the word communication, it's in communing, right? So we'll send an email or we'll say something in a meeting and we think we've communicated it. But the truth is, until there is some understanding on the other side and an acknowledgement that the other side, gets it, digests it, can sort of take it away and remember it, it hasn't been communicated. So what happens in those moments when someone doesn't understand? And what I see so often is that it's a bit like someone in a foreign country, they say it in English, but they say it slower and louder. Like, that's not going to make someone who doesn't speak English understand you.
Exactly.
Just repeating yourself is not the answer. So it means that as a leader, we sometimes have to think not how we want to say it or what we want to say. It's like, I need to check in and make sure that you understand it. I need to make sure that this is communicated. I want to make sure that it's communicated in a way that can be passed on, and it's not going to be sort of a game of telephone along the line. And that's the onus is on us, right? At the end of the day, the leader should be getting paid the most in the organization. You don't get paid the most just because you have the biggest title. You get paid the most because it takes a little bit more work on that front.
Right. So, but Monique, you're dealing with people from all walks of life and all different lived experiences and perceptions and their lenses. Right. I mean, this is a lot of pressure, especially for the newbie founder who's, learning for the first time how to manage a growing business and lead a growing business and bringing on customers and pitching investors. And, oh, wow, now I've got to be understood too and make sure that I'm understanding. So how do they navigate those waters of all the different backgrounds?
It's a lot. And that's honestly why it's so common for all of us to just hire people who we feel are like us, who get us, or we get them, or they are a fit, or things of that nature, because we feel that we can have a shorthand. But even in those situations, I think that you're leaving money on the table if you always hire someone who's exactly like you, because you lose perspective, and perspective leads to better decision making. But also you make assumptions that they understand you, or
That's
that they're
right.
clear on something, and they may not be. So
And as a leader, Monique, you have to give people the ability to come back and say, I disagree, or have that conversation. They can't be some of the world leaders we're seeing right now who are only told what they want to hear.
absolutely. And a lot of this work requires upfront work, but then the amount of work that you save, time, energy, and ultimately money you save yourself in the long run is huge.
Yeah.
So for example, if you onboard someone really well, right? I had a client where basically new people who just had to come in and learn trial by fire, shadowing somebody for 2 days and then being let loose. Like, how can you be successful? How can you meet expectations if that's what you do? So number one, it's clarifying expectations. Make sure that you and I are on the same page. And sometimes that means literally on the same page of what's expected. How many of the processes that we have can we document it? One of the things that was so beneficial for those of you who are really at the early stages of the business, start writing down anything that you're doing, a process. For example, Andy, you've got your podcast. Wouldn't it be great if somebody just ran all the other stuff? If you wrote everything down and you could hand that checklist off to someone, how much more quickly can they ramp up and make sure that they do it in a way that's effective and efficient for the company?
Well, you're singing my song, Systems and Procedures. That's like where I live.
People don't want to do it. There's nothing sexy in that, right? They want to go out and have conversations with customers, and they want to build a really pretty website and all that stuff, and that's needed. But if you do the upfront work, everything else gets better down the line. So then I always really believe in having really open conversations and setting up, understanding your employees, like from day one, when they on their first day, getting to know them. How do you communicate? How do you like to be communicated with? Letting them know how you communicate. There's a DISC assessment. I use DISC assessments with all my clients, and there's a particular report that I use because it's great. And there's actually a page that says ways to communicate with Monique, and another that says ways not to communicate with Monique. And that can be an amazing roadmap. Asking an employee, how do you like to hear bad news? Those of us who prefer, in the bad news, good news question, I always prefer bad news first, then the good news. There are people who are better communicators by phone. There's still some of us out there. Hello. But some people would rather work in Slack. Understanding, just asking those simple questions.
Oh my gosh, this is like so important.
Basic.
And folks, it takes away so much awkwardness and uncomfortableness and assumptions when we start from the beginning. Hey, I want to know how you want to hear things so that I'm not
and miscommunication. It avoids miscommunication, which can cause that turbulence. And another great question you can ask people on the first day is, what makes you feel valued? I had a client, she's the CEO of a company, and her CEO, every time he wanted to thank her, would give her a $250 gift card to a spa. And she was furious. And I said, well, why? She said, I hate
I'll take it.
I never go to spa. I know, I would too. I never go to spas. And I said, have you told him that? Right? He didn't know. He thought in his language, he was saying, thank you. In her language, he was saying, I don't know you. I don't understand you. Here's something I just did.
Right. And maybe I had someone do it for me.
Yeah.
Language of love is key, whether you're in a relationship with a beloved or with a team member, understanding that the way I feel valued, if you want to give me, a gift, please donate to my favorite cause, the animal shelter.
It might be valuable for someone to get off early on Fridays for a month. Or right, it may be meaningful for them to be able to work from home on Mondays, or there's so many things that we can do that can support our individual team members.
I really love about these questions, and founders, please take this in, write this down, and of course, get Monique's book, Turbulence. But is that when you write those things down, imagine how valued already your new hire is feeling, your new team partner is going to be feeling, because you've asked such important questions about who they be. And so now they're feeling even more honored, which gives them more trust and feeling like they belong, and they're going to bring even more of their deliciousness to the organization.
And that's because part of communication is listening. That's part of the communing, right? And employees or team members, as I like to call them, if they feel heard, even if they make a recommendation or they make a request or they ask for a raise, it doesn't mean you always need to give them or are able to give them. But if they feel truly heard, that is incredibly powerful for you as a leader.
Absolutely. But again, these are skill sets. This is called upping your founder game, right? Yeah. So that you continue to do better. And as I always tell my children, I always quoted Maya for years. Oh, as I know better, I'll do better. Right? As a parent, same thing in your business. And so as founders evolve, each year they're getting better and better. How do they evolve with their leadership? What have you seen when you start working with someone who's a little more seasoned, like they got 5 years under their tiara, and they're feeling confident, but still they need to pull back some more layers?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, just forget as a leader, just in your career, what made you successful at 25 is not what makes you successful at 35 or 45. As our companies grow, they require different things from us. So we constantly have to be growing and evolving, like I said, to stay ahead of wherever our business is. We don't want to be a great leader for a 50-person organization when we have 200 employees. So it's about staying ahead of the game and constantly evaluating. There's so many wonderful professional development tools. There's assessments, things you can do to just say, okay, what are my gaps? Where do I need to grow? There's a great book, but I have to say that as good as the book is, the title is the best, is What Gets You Here What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And so remembering that there is nothing wrong with the idea that we as leaders have to constantly be learning, and we have to be open to really looking into a mirror. And the way I try and get people to think about it is that mirrors themselves have no judgment. It's a piece of glass. Right. The problem is when we look in the mirror, we judge ourselves. So self-assessing without being self-critical is so powerful to your professional development as a leader. And if you can do it, and if you can be open and look at those things squarely in the eye and start developing new skills or improving old skills, then what an example that sets for your team. Now imagine everybody in your team was constantly improving, constantly growing, constantly getting better. What does that do for the company as a whole?
Right. Unbelievable. And I go back to that wonderful phrase you said, professional vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Right. So being, people are watching you kind of stumble. Sometimes you get it right. Sometimes you don't. But you're vulnerable enough to say, okay, but I'm getting better. I'm doing this.
Look at it.
Yeah. And it gives people permission to also go, okay. And look, I know some days you go, what? I don't want to up my game. I've got enough pressure as it is. But your passion is your business. Your North Star is what you're working so hard on. It needs you to step up and do the self-assessment. And of course, grab a copy of Turbulence and get the right language instead of doing out of Moonstruck. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, I mean, if you have a business, you understand investment. And this investment is the key to the success of any business. There is no successful business that can have a leader that has not grown and developed from the day that company started or the day that they started with that organization. And so, being open to that development and realizing that you don't have to do it alone. There are amazing resources out there. And the biggest hurdle is often our own internal dialogue about what does it mean if I look at my blind spots, or I know I'm doing it fine and it's all working, so I'm not going to look at this. But, maybe are there things your teams aren't telling you? It's amazing what a 360 can do for a leader. But if you look at it with a self-critical eye, rather than just as a judgment-free learning opportunity,
as the observer,
growth is exponential at that point. It really is.
That's right. And I love analogies. Think about it like when the first time you tried pad thai, that recipe, you did it again. You got a little better. You got better and better now, you're 20 pounds heavier and you're eating it all the time. Oh, that's
But
just
like I
me.
said, it's also about it's just realizing that the skills and qualities required to be the leader of a 3-person startup are not the same as if you have investors in a 35-person organization, or if you're in a Series C and you're looking at a
That's
$50
right.
million investment with VCs. Right? It just requires different things of you, even on a
That's
daily basis.
And you have to step up. And sometimes what I've seen really smart founders do, they know they're not the vision carrier. And
Mhm.
so they bring someone on board and empower them to be the one who takes care of all of that. And they may stay focused on their lane of genius.
That is so important, Andy. I'm so glad you said that. The saying in the startup ecosystem is, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? And there are people who want to be kings or queens. And that isn't always the roadmap to success. Right. And so I think it takes 2 things to get there. Number one, it takes being open enough to look and say, what is my value what is my highest value to this organization? There may be a point where you can hire enough people to be doing that you say, what is my highest value? And sometimes that's not being the CEO. So then the other thing is, how do you have that conversation with yourself that doesn't make people feel like somehow you failed if you don't have that title?
Right.
I lived in Austin and I'm very involved for many years, and I very involved in the startup ecosystem there, which is incredibly robust.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there's a
And I'm amazed if you haven't met Gail right here, because Gail has been involved in the Austin ecosystem for forever too. That's wonderful. Go ahead.
I did a long time. And there's a wonderful founder who started a business, took years for him to get it to the point where he sold it to Nestle. And then he founded his next business. Within 6 months, he hired a CEO. And with 18 months, he had sold that business for
Nice.
$250 million because he was
Nice.
open enough with understanding what his strengths were as a leader.
Can we talk a little bit about leading investors? What often happens to a newbie founder is that they get investment dollars, whether it's 25,000, 250,000, or 2.5 million. And they often think, oh my gosh, I need to honor them and do what they tell me and take their feedback. And it's other people's money. It's not mine. What am I going to do? And they need to lead the investors, just like when you onboard a new team member, as Monique was saying, you need to do the same thing. Have the rules of engagement right up front. This is how many times you're going to hear from me. This is how our conversations are going to go. What is your advice for the newbie founder who now has investors?
That is so exciting to talk about because it is such a crucial relationship.
Yes.
And I have seen, I can't tell you how many companies I know that actually ended up folding because they had the wrong people on their cap table and that relationship wasn't productive. And so there's this dynamic where, especially first-time founders, they feel the need, because they need investors, right? They start creating a hierarchical sort of dynamic in their mind with their board of directors. And that's really not healthy. At the end of the day, you have to see them as peers. You are all in the same boat and you are rowing in the same direction to achieve the same goal, right? You have a vision that you've articulated to them. They bought into that vision. They bring perspective, they bring expertise, they bring contacts, but it doesn't mean that you acquiesce to them at all times, especially, later in the later funding cycles, you often have VCs, and most VCs have not founded and scaled a startup.
Like 90% of them.
Hello. And so if you haven't been in the trenches of the scaling, there's a lot that you don't understand. So always taking into account what is the perspective and the value that each board member brings, and then weighing it accordingly. And always thinking that your opinion, your perspective, and your decisions carry exactly as much weight as anybody else on your board.
Absolutely. If your business doesn't succeed, they're not going to meet their agenda. which is they have people who've invested in their fund that
Right.
want to see these returns. And you can't do it if you're constantly on the phone every day of the week with some nervous Nelly investor.
And the investors don't want you to see you as a nervous Nelly,
That's
right? They
right.
want to see your confidence and conviction. There is no savvy investor who is going to have a hard time or be upset with a founder who says we need to pivot. But because we've gotten this data, our customers are telling us there's this massive opportunity. We've done the forecasting, and this is the direction we need to move the organization. They're not going to be mad at you because no matter where you are in the startup phase, whatever your business is today, it is going to be different in 18 months, right? Things happen, information comes in, better decision making happens every month.
Yep,
the problem is you cannot go to your board and say, oh, what do I do? Right? That's not what your board is there for. If you don't know, they are happy to move you out of the way and bring somebody in who
That's
does
right.
know. Right.
That's right, boy. That confidence piece is so important. And I know that you talk a lot about this in one of your chapters in Turbulence, just getting that matrix, really understanding where you fall in that matrix and understand what that authentic leadership looks like.
Yeah,
Monique.
executive presence.
Yes,
so
the executive. And again, folks, it's, this is your new role. The employee is long gone. You are the owner. You are the founder. And to keep holding on to that equity, you've got to keep stepping up your game. Yeah. I'd like to have a little sidebar to talk about something that a lot of women in the startup ecosystem and a lot of women in tech are talking about, but we don't know. We're working with our language around this conversation, and it's dealing with the bro culture. So you and I, we grow up with a different level of misogyny, okay?
Yeah.
And a different type of misogyny. Now, with our 40 and under year old men, they have taken on this dude culture, bro culture, which they don't really see the misogyny in it. And especially in the tech world, because you've got open cubicles, everybody's into this open space thing. And so now it's, quote, locker room conversation is happening.
Yeah.
As a leader, and especially a female leader, how can we have these conversations so that we set the culture where people understand what misogynistic language looks and feels like for women on the team, as well as leaders? And do you know what I'm talking about with this bro culture language in the startup?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the startup ecosystem, anything coming out of Silicon Valley in particular is sort of, are you guys in 1985? And those of us who were adults in 1985 understand what that was like. That is such a loaded thing. And I think first and foremost, it has to come down to culture. And as a leader, you have to determine what the culture of your organization is.
Yeah.
I find in particular, this happens in sales departments. Mm-hmm. A lot of that kind of language tends to happen. You have to decide what kind of a culture do we have? Number one, is that kind of language part of our culture, right? And if not, then what do you do about it when that starts to happen?
Because it's like they're at the bar having beers together. This is the conversation. And that's why we just like somehow... Go ahead.
Well, but then you also have to make sure that the women in your organization feel supported and safe enough to say, not just to you, like you want to know when those kinds of conversations are happening in the office, right? We can't, unfortunately, we can't manage what somebody's doing in a bar after work. But within the four walls of our business, we absolutely can. And women have to feel that they have a leader that they can talk to honestly. But the goal for me when I'm working on culture with a founder is, what if you create a culture where that woman can say something to that man in the moment that it's happening, and just put up a mirror. I have an 18-year-old son, and I am a single mom, and he has certainly heard a lot of these conversations from me. And yet he is immersed in a lot of teenage boy stuff that he doesn't realize where it crosses the line. And I constantly have to say, hey, this is how I heard this. Is that what you want women who hear you to say, to feel, or to think, or to believe about you?
Just that, Monique, is so helpful, because what I'm seeing too is the younger women taking on the bro language, just like we tried when we were entering law and finance and high levels of senior roles in corporations. We thought we had to sort of dress the way the guys did and act like the guys did. This is what I'm
That's right.
seeing. The fellow women, I'm just going like, look, what just came out of your mouth is misogynistic, and you're a woman.
Yeah, well, that's because what are we rewarding? Part of culture is what do you reward? Who's getting promoted is part of your culture. So if the people who behave that way are the ones getting promoted, then you think that's how I have to behave in order to get ahead.
Got it.
So you as a leader are the only one who can change the language of your culture and say, we are promoting this, we are supporting this, and we are stopping this other thing.
Right. And because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And I think for us as women, I think it's ridiculous. We have to do this, right? I am all in with this is ridiculous, but I still think that we need to be educating a lot of people. And I think there are some people we can never educate, but there are some that we can. So if we approach it from the point of view, I want to make you aware of how uncomfortable that conversation makes me, or how you talk about that. Or if the client heard you say that before you hung up the phone, what second, those become coaching conversations of helping men, particularly young men who are doing that bro culture thing, and making them realize there's some who may actually take it on. And then what if those men start then coaching other men?
Yeah. See, this is so important, because I'm sorry, I'm of the nature where I want to say, hold my beer, and then just go bitch slap somebody. And
yeah.
And then of course
I'm Latin, so don't even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm age conscious too, so that I go, okay, well, are they ever going to listen to what I'm going to say as an older woman? And so I want to have that language. So you have really, really helped me be able to share that segment, Monique, with the women I know who are on the side having these conversations, and especially those women founders who are up against other male founders at a pitch event, and they've got enough on their plate with the unconscious bias, but then they start hearing that, and especially at the after parties.
Misogynist. My big thing that I work on a lot is the misogynistic questions from investors.
Yeah.
And there's actually research out of University of Pennsylvania that shows that men talking to VCs get asked positive questions about growth and opportunity, whereas women get asked questions about challenges and roadblocks. And that's another thing. I just say, if there's an elephant in the room, address it. If an investor is asking you those kinds of questions, it's okay to say, so I see that you're focusing on the challenges. I want to make sure that you don't want to dismiss it, but I want to make sure we're also focusing on the growth opportunity, or the size of the market, or our competitive.
I love that language.
And redirecting the dialogue.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Monique, I could just ping you for questions for hours.
Well, it's fun for me. I could get on this all day long.
And Mia's right. Bro culture. That's a whole episode. Yes, I think I need to get, a few women together and that we have this conversation so we can wake up this group of folks. I mean, I had a .com, so it was we had to deal with a lot of that, especially stock option negotiations, for crying out loud. But now this has just become too prevalent in the startup ecosystem. So 2 questions I'd love to ask you, and then we'll wrap up. When have you felt inadequate as a founder and a leader? I shouldn't say when you have felt inadequate as a founder and a leader. What do you, especially someone who's so deep into coaching others, what mindset hack has really helped you shift out of the doubt, or accept the doubt, know the doubt is there, and still move forward?
So what 2 thoughts I have on that. First, I am a complete lover of language. My father was a litigator and a lover of literature and language, and he instilled that in me. And so when I hear the word inadequate, I think that isn't quite the right word. And I think that we judge ourselves quite harshly if we think of ourselves as inadequate. What I love to think about it, what was I unprepared for? Or what thought process was holding me back? And we all, again, because we constantly have to be growing, there's always going to be a place for that. Boy. And for me, I think that it was really, and I think probably actually because I started as an actor, where you go into an audition and you're sitting in a room with 150 people who are your age and your hair color and your eye color and sort of wearing an outfit, which is much like whatever outfit you're wearing, right? That there is always this mindset of scarcity. I think the hardest thing for me is always to just come back to a place of abundance. There is a lot of work out there. There are a lot of customers out there. There's a lot of opportunity out there. You don't need it all. But if you think that if you come at it from the place of, I need more, I don't have enough or whatever, as opposed to saying, okay, there's enough out there. I just have to figure out how to get what I need.
Right.
And for me in particular, it's really getting very clear on my metrics for my own business. It's how many, when I do my strategic planning for the year, is how many of each type of client do I need to get for the year to reach my goals?
Wow.
And because if you are always thinking, I need more, like how can you ever feel satisfied? Because however much you get, if your goal is more, there's always more to get. So making it specific can really help you function in that place of abundance rather than scarcity. That's been my real learning lesson, and providing myself with real goals and specific metrics around that. The stress relief for me has been enormous.
It's
and
huge.
then I always try to pass that on then to my team, because if I'm not stressed about it, they're not going to be stressed about it. Whether I talk about it with them or not, they're going to sense my stress, right? So what does that do for my executive presence when I'm in a clear, calmer state?
See, and it helps you just sort of keep the blinders on too, because there's plenty of ocean in the sea, whatever, but there's plenty out there. And when you come from a place of abundance, you're not looking at something's being taken away from you. You're just sharing all that's out there.
And right customers are out there. The right investors are out there. The right team members are out there. Please, I call it in the book, I call it hiring by proximity. Early stage founders often hire somebody because they know them, or they're friends with somebody who's already on the team, and they're breathing and they kind of know something about marketing, and they bring them in. Like, put the word out there, put it on Indeed, try and get the biggest pool of talent. Abundance rather than scarcity. There's so many times where that's going to net you an amazing reward.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Something fierce. Okay, so let's go ahead and see who is winning the free copy of your book. Folks, this is what's great about showing up live and leaving a comment. It gets you into the pool of when I get to do this, which is so much fun. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why it's only 4, because I know we had several other folks tuning in, but that's okay. Let's see who won the book.
No worries.
Brent from Canada. Woohoo!
Hey, Brent.
You are a winner today. Yay. And the beauty of Brent Manuel is that he is all about making sure folks are having not just diverse as in female, BIPOC, LGBTQ+, but also disabled. And he's a voice in the disabled community.
Oh, I'm so delighted, Brent. Actually, I'm on the board of a diversity and inclusion focused accelerator. And I was just having a conversation with our CEO today, very much about making sure we're keeping the aperture open for disabled as part of our under-supported and underestimated founder pool. It's so important. And also, I think that this bro culture conversation, that the tools to manage that are not unlike microaggressions for people of color or LGBTQ or anyone else, because it's still educating the mindset of people who have never had to really look beyond themselves in the workplace.
So beautifully said. Thank you, Monique, for joining me today. Any last thoughts before I pop you into the green room and give you a hug after the show?
Yeah, no, I will leave you with one thing to all of those of you who are founders. Being a founder is the second hardest thing you'll do if you have children. If you don't have children, it will be the hardest thing that you do. But the highest rate of reward comes from that. And what I have found in all my 12 years of doing this is that if you focus on growing as a leader, that you grow so much as a person. The rewards are not only financial in the growth of your business. In a team that is supported, can buy homes and have kids and have a place to go, but you personally can grow. And so that's why I think that founders have a really unique place in the world, and they are, in my estimation, entrepreneurs, the solution to every problem in the world. So I thank you.
Yay for that. That is so wonderful. Those are phenomenal final words. Thank you so for joining me. I'll see you on the other side as I wrap things up here. Oh my gosh, I don't know about you, but I learned so much today. And what's wonderful about having guests like Monique on, all my guests, is that I absorb this and I can just pass it out again through the world. Sometimes while we're chatting here on the show or on the social media platforms. It's a great way to, keep the conversation, the ripple effect moving forward. So we just keep doing better and holding hands and cheering each other on as founders. And speaking of which, let me share with you who's coming up next week, Tuesday. That's March 1st at 12 p.m. ET. Our guest is Brittany Driscoll, the co-founder and CEO of Squeeze, a way better massage experience from the founders of Dry Bar. And Brittany is a female entrepreneur, cancer survivor, and wellness advocate. And she's going to be sharing how she created a franchise model for her startup, which is an app. Okay, folks? And we'll learn how this fab female founder is also changing the world by empowering others to use their voice for good. It's going to be a delicious conversation. I love learning about franchising too, and especially for an app. It's just amazing. How do you know when I posted a new show? You joined the Startup Life Live meetup group. So hop on over there and you'll get an announcement whenever I post a new show. And so you can watch it live or via replay. And again, I'm so grateful for you podcast listeners and for you replay viewers for tuning in. And thank you for staying strong and remembering that you're wicked smarter than you think and stronger and more capable than you can imagine. And be sure to go get a copy of Turbulence. This will help you have the language so that you have created a landscape and a culture that will allow you and your team members to thrive, right? Oh, so good. I'm cheering you on everywhere you glow, everywhere I glow, and I'm wishing you a delicious day. And that's it for today. She runs around looking for her end slide. Here it is. Bye, everyone. See you next time.